Alright, so apparently I can't have kids, and my husband of 2 years decided he's going to leave me because of that. But he doesn't just leave me, no. He goes with my sister. That's right, my stepsister. She said, hey, well, if you're going to leave her, you can be with me. Well, you know what? It turns out I can have children, and here's why the test said that I can't. One question. Can someone die of a sudden dehydration? Because if not, I think I'll be the first recorded case of a person who's going to die from crying so much. I seriously just can't take it anymore. And the worst thing is that there's only one way out of all this. Well, I'm going through some bad stuff, and this is divorce. Yep. I was married in and by the church, so something like conventional divorce, it's not so well regarded. Which makes the idea hurt even more, and I've been with my husband Bob for a couple of years now. The nicest years of my life, but I failed in my roles as a woman to be able to give us a family as we so much desire. I don't know what's wrong with me, my anatomy or something, but I'm unable to conceive, and I've just returned from a checkup. But with, not so promising news. I'm staying at my stepsister Ava's house, who has let me stay here as long as I want, since I'm scared to death to go home and show Bob the results. Results that indicate that I'm childless. I can't explain everything well, as these are medical terms that become a blur to me when I was told the phrase, I'm sorry, Miss Gina, but you can't give birth. They started telling me a bunch of phrases and terms that I was unfamiliar with, not considering that inside I was falling apart. Well, I'm falling apart by God, our Creator. I'm sorry to use God's name in vain, but I know that He, in His infinite glory and wisdom, will know that He has a plan for me, but for now all I have left to do is cry. To cry over the fact that because of me, the house we bought, the family car we managed to acquire, and all of our efforts to start a family have gone down the drain. Adoption is ruled out since Bob is a very devout person of faith, and well, let's just say that being with him is not as easy as it may seem. Life with a religious zealot has changed the way I look at things. It's given me positive, but also negatives, and when we started dating, he was a tender person. Very much in love, who wrote me letters and immense poems and dedicated such a beautiful Bible passage to me that sometimes I would ask him who had written that, and he would tell me the exact verse over and over. It was never in my plans to fall in love with a religious man, but although my friends always told me to look at everything sideways, at least I could appreciate what a good person he was. You know, he wasn't one of those phonies who pretend to be cannery when in reality they're a snake. No, my Bob is not like that. He's tender, attentive and faithful follower to the family model. Attends Mass every Sunday and holidays and helps the neediest people in social programs, and has even managed to lift us as a couple in the roughest of moments. He's also a workshop and motivational speaker, always putting God at the top of his sermons. He's been able to give conferences in several states and is looking forward to going to Guatemala next year, so he can just continue to bring food to the table. It's hard to describe all that this man does, without falling head over heels in love. And then there's me, a good-for-nothing who only teaches at a public school, and I was raised in a dysfunctional family. And the only good thing left for me was my stepsister, who was the only person in the family who cared about me, who was by my side during medical exams, the same exams I had to have done on the sly. Since although he is very good with public speaking and support and faith, Bob is not a fan of many, quote, scientific issues. Beyond being against termination of pregnancy, he also doesn't like trips to the gynecologist very much. And when I told him he could see me with the same one who treats Ava, he almost had a heart attack. Oh, treating you to a male doctor to see your private parts? How disrespectful and lacking in modesty does a woman have to be to expose her private parts to a stranger instead of her husband? Well, at first I thought it was something against the fact that he was a man, but then I knew it would serve just as well if he were to be a woman. The point was, according to him, not to expose me to anyone, just my mother, whom I hadn't seen since I was 3 years of age, and the midwife maybe assisting me with the future pregnancies, which seemed like an impossible idea. No one else. I mean, sure, it's a pretty radical stance, and while in one respect I find it welcoming that he protects me and makes me feel like this, I can understand the things my dad used to say to me when I commented to him about dating a religious boy. I don't get along that well with my dad, but one thing will always echo in my head. It'll be, quote, "Keep in mind that you're going out with someone who has the same mentality as your great-great-grandfather." And that phrase just always stuck in my head to this very day. In keeping with that line that Bob doesn't like some things about the modern era, I can also talk about what he does like. He likes laws, justice, and the American way of life. He would tell me that he didn't mind settling for just one child as long as it was his. You know, blood of his blood. He always uses biblical terms so that some readers will understand. But now it can't be done. Since we've been married, we've been trying to conceive a baby, but all efforts have been futile. There was a time when we thought that we had succeeded, but it was nothing more than a false alarm. I remember that we had our first time a week after our wedding, and we tried, but to no avail. The next time was about 2 months later, and it's difficult to get pregnant when the occasions where we can be intimate are very rare. It's not that we lack time, it's just because of Bob's ideas. He tells me that we can't be consummating the act so frequently because we may be sinning against God's design, which dictates that the act cannot be done with motives of satisfaction, but purely procreative. It's something I've had to adjust, but for Bob, I've had no problem with anything. Except that now I don't know how to get pregnant. I have to give him the news or else he'll lose his desire for me, and many will say that love is stronger than wanting a family. But if you can't have a child, why have a marriage in the first place? I mean, God would not want to be very pleased with the idea, but there's nothing else I can do, and if we get into something a bit more intimate, he's been a bit abrupt the last few times, causing him to lose the tender and magical moment that used to just happen at the beginning of our contacts. It's a very sad scenario, I know. Ava herself has advised me that if that's the life I'm living, it's not worth it, and to leave Bob. But he's the best man I've ever been with, although that's not saying much. I've only dated 3 men, but Bob is my first time at all, and I just loved him too much to leave the life that we have. I'll try to find a way to please him. I just don't know if in vitro pregnancy might be an option for him. After all, it would use our genetic material, and that's what you're looking for, isn't it? Isn't it? Ugh. Update number 1. 1 month later. Worst month ever, hands down. I don't know whether to love or hate Ava, but I feel like she saved me from the trouble I would go through with Bob to disclose my condition to him. She was the one who revealed my infertility to him, even though I asked her not to. However, she saw how miserable I had become for a while, and I at one point stopped eating. I turned pale and was almost being taken to the hospital because my lights went out. Well, thank goodness it was a weekend, otherwise I would have scared the kids in the classroom and caused chaos in the student council. Despite that, many were concerned about my health, including Bob, who had been pampering me without knowing what was causing my discomfort. As he treated me better and better, the worse I felt, knowing what the truth was. I talked a lot with Ava, who insisted that I had to talk to Bob to get it off my chest, and that the longer I kept it a secret, the worse it would be for me, as it could get to the point where I would be walking a corpse. Still, I asked her not to say anything, as I could not bear my husband's disappointed face, but that's when it happened. We were in the house talking, and when Bob arrived, she went running down the stairs to tell him, and I yelled at her, practically begging her not to. But then I just heard a door slam shut, and I was too afraid to go downstairs to the living room, not knowing which of us had kicked the door in. But when I heard those footsteps, I feared the worst. It was definitely Ava. And she was in a rage, just telling me that I had better stay away from the insensitive brute. When I asked her what happened, she just told me that she had talked to him about infertility and that he almost fainted. She told me that, indeed, he didn't take it well and left in his car, and I don't even know to where. I tried to call him, but Ava cut me off by telling me not to do that I should not demean myself and to keep what little dignity that I had left. Well, that didn't make me feel quite right, but here I am, broken inside and out, not knowing where my husband is and not knowing if he'll ever come back to me. Maybe not, and I would not blame him, even if it is tedious paperwork. Well, I would have to find out a way to make my life without him, but in God's eyes, we'll always be together. And I think it's a pain from which I can never truly recover, but it's time to look at the positive side of the situation, something Bob always taught me to do. And as they say, for every door God closes, he opens a window. Update number 2, 4 months later. There are so many stories in the Bible about treacherous brothers and unfaithful husbands, but I never thought I would compare my life with the passages in the Bible. It seems like I defended a lot. But little by little, I stopped seeing that card that many have, and it's because of the betrayal I received from my best friend. My stepsister, my sister, Ava. Ava's now dating Bob just as you're reading it. The two are in a relationship, and although it's not really that official, at least I know that they're dating and that they've kept the social media free discourse precisely because of the reclusive nature of both of them. Or, well, Bob's, but now Ava's with him, and just like what happened with me, she'll soon have to get used to that radical religious way of life that I had to restrain myself from these last few years. Of course, that's if she wants to stay with him, and from the looks of it, that's the case. It's the most twisted thing in the world, and after all that talk, Ava gave me about the guy not being worth it. Because he would not accept my physical condition, now she's going to go and date him, huh? Maybe because she can give him a child like he wants so badly. Well, I found out from a mutual friend who called me in the sunshine to tell me that she had seen Bob and Ava holding hands at the mall after the guy had spent years criticizing the unconventional models in the family. Now he's going with anyone else, and I say anyone because Ava has managed to, quote, take advantage of her life much more than I have. While I was the prude who preferred to stay home and bake oatmeal cookies, Ava spent her time at parties and blowouts that were too powerful, even for us, and given up that kind of freedom for a man who's the opposite of the term and who's still the husband of your stepsister. And as I said, divorce is almost a unicorn in the relationship, as it's not implemented more often. It seems strange to me, because Ava always talks badly about Bob, and, that he was this, that he was that I would end up in a covenant, or that he was going to bring my final judgment to my life, sort of the beginning of the end type thing. But from then on, I would not have imagined what it felt like. The biggest mistake of all, I think, was trusting her. But partly, I think, I got it as a punishment. I think this is just God sending plagues to his less pure children and, in a way, teaching them that sometimes he's not to blame for our factory defaults. Update number 3. 1 year later. This is an update on my life and the bad people in it. First, Ava, my stepsister, who has been with my ex-husband Bob, has been living the happiest life. The life that I used to live, and as for Bob, I cannot be more disappointed and upset with him, as he has made a 180-degree change from how he was with me. From being a religious fanatic to someone more liberal who says that he has no problem being with my stepsister because we don't even share the same blood. I mean, how do I know this? It's easy because I hear from our mutual friends who are deeply disappointed in Bob. I believe he has lost many friendships in the church precisely because of these recent actions, as they're, far from being pure of heart. Although they also view me with condescension, and that doesn't make me feel any better. The fact that in God's eyes, Bob and I are still together makes my stomach ache every time I think about it. They're now living together as if they were a couple. With Bob and I having just filed divorce papers a few days ago, this is the reason I'm writing to you now. Well, that and something else I've been thinking about after discussing it with a friend. It turns out that from other people's comments, it was already apparent that the two of them, Ava and Bob, possessed a kind of closeness before our separation. I mean, even at the time of my infertility conflict, the two of them were already dating behind my back on their own. That's quite confusing to me because Ava was supporting me in the conflict, and I could tell that she was not on good terms with Bob. This made me draw a bitter conclusion. I mean, what if, in reality, everything Ava stood up for was nothing more than a lie, and she just wanted Bob and me to be fighting so she could throw herself at him? I mean, Bob is too handsome and many women find him extremely attractive, but because of his personality. I understand that he might repel a few, and I came to consider myself the exception to the rule because of all the future that we could achieve together. But Ava, well, she's radically different. A loose cannon, and I think she might even have a little more conviction than Bob himself. I mean, just imagine. If she managed to tame him so that he would get rid of a lot of his religious behavior, what can you expect from the whole thing? I mean, to top it all off, and as I told you before, they're considering having children. Even before marriage, I don't know, maybe because Bob knows he can't remarry in church, and if so, it would be very hypocritical of him to have treated me the way he treated me throughout our relationship. Well, that was made aside from the pain and sadness. It has made me feel angry and stupid for having to put up with that psychological abuse for so many years, even when I knew it was partly my fault. This makes me rethink some things regarding the future of my relationship with him, since they have not only came to see themselves as a couple of the year, but have tried to slander me to other people. Eventually, when Bob is asked about the breakup we had, he doesn't mention the fact that he left me because I could not give him children, but he particularly talks about how I was a difficult person and a very egg-without-salt type of character. Example, prude, who was only with him because, quote, I had nothing better. Were those exact words several of my friends said when they talked to me about it. The only thing that he does to earn the hatred of more and more people, but, well, that's up to him. I know that God has a place for people like that, and it's not exactly at his side. It's amazing how I've become a bit more blasphemous lately, but it's because sometimes you get tired of turning the other cheek, and I wish I could find a way to make them understand that they made my life a pretty big whirlwind of depression. I feel like I have a slight advantage with the alimony thing, but it's not like I can take advantage of that. I mean, unlike others, I'm actually an honest person, and I would not want to use that money, which, by the way, I'm a little unhappy to have, for some sort of revenge. I can't do that. Mind you, I'm perhaps the only person who says that I shouldn't do it, as everyone I know, including my father, said I should do something about it. And as for my father, well, although he and I haven't always had the best relationship in the world, this split with Bob and Ava has made him a little softer and more protective of me. He cares about me and tells me that I should not let the world walk all over me so easily. If I were him, I would do something simpler, but his idea involves explosives or visits from certain friends. Very common comments when you have a father who spent decades in the military. Well, I know all too well that there are more ways I can get back at him. You know what, I can think of a few. But anyways, for that I need some time, and considering that now more than ever, I've been on the lookout for ways to get by on my house on my own. Sometimes I feel that alimony's not enough, and of course I'm talking about this in the case of I want to get even, because as I've told you repeatedly, I'm not a person to do that kind of thing. But if these two have been able to show me anything, it's that people can change, and it's not always necessarily for the better. Update number 4, 4 months later. Hey guys, I'm back with an update. Well, you're seeing, or rather reading, a new Jinnah, one who would no longer accept deceit or mockery from others who may have God in her heart but also in her actions, and who did not let anyone walk all over her. Of course, and I also feel that I could have had many things going for me, but I can't deny that I knew how to take advantage of them to a great extent. But first, I must tell you a couple of things, starting with the fact that Bob was indeed cheating on me with Ava since before our discussion, months before even. I found out from a post Ava made saying how Bob was the perfect man for her, and she had known about it for years when they first started dating, and you don't have to be a genius to get the math right. She promptly deleted the post and then changed the years to months. Perhaps because, I don't know, more than one of us privately complained to her without me doing anything. She alone had already earned the hatred of many. But Bob too, and it is perhaps because of this that the alimony ended up being quite abundant. Because of the pain and sorrow that Bob felt towards me, and he wanted to give me money as a way to make amends, but that's not all. There's also the other major issues, the one that started this whole conflict and what caused me to end what I thought was the best relationship of my life. Infertility. I don't know if Bob fantasized about giving birth to the new Jesus Christ or something, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that I had almost to do with the desire for intimacy. I know this because, well, let's just say that there have been very forthcoming people on social media and have shown how they have not been able to succeed with having their baby. Well, that makes me wonder, whatever happened to having a baby under the religiously correct conditions? Or did that only apply to me? Because from what Bob always says on networks, he still can't have a baby, and I doubt he's going to get a sperm count as a test to make sure he's not the one that's the problem. Because for it to happen to you with one woman is something. But for it to happen to you with two, dude, I already feel like the problem has gone too far. But whatever the outcome, the answer to it will all lay under one concept: cheating. Deception on Ava's part, because here's where the second bombshell comes in. I am not childless. The childless one is actually Ava, who stabbed me in the back by exchanging my fertility test results. And all because of the same mistake I've always made, believing that she was doing something good for me. Okay, I'm going to explain it better now, as I feel I'm not giving enough details. Due to the routine matters, I had to go to the gynecologist again, seeing that I now had some freedom to be able to go and do as I please, without Bob complaining. I was able to go without any complaints, but I had to change doctors for two reasons. First, the cost. The one I was going to was expensive, and I felt that I had to see someone else. Second, and more importantly, the earlier one was a personal friend of Ava's, and I wanted nothing to do with her. Even on that level, unbeknownst to me, I got to make an excellent decision, because with the next doctor I discovered something very interesting. She said to me after my checkup, "Will you consider not having children? Because with your history, I don't think you would be interested." Well, I explained my condition, and she said it was odd, as she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. I was as fertile as a newly arrived hen in the nest. When I was given an in-depth analysis, guess what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nada. Zilch. And that left me petrified. I went to do another test, just to make sure. But it was the same thing, and that's what connected the dots in my head. It was so simple, and yet I did not get to see it. Ava must have gotten her test secretly done at the same time, so she may have swapped her results with mine, or even got them tampered with to help that one gynecologist who was her friend. There is tons of possibilities, but I don't have proof for any of the assumptions because that was a long time ago. Now, this was the reason Ava could not have babies, because she was the one suffering with these conditions. I say this because she never cared about having children for reasons she never disclosed with me, and of course, that was precisely why. But that left me with only one question: why could I not get pregnant? The doctor told me there were many reasons, from wrong timing to inexperience, and she told me something that left me reflective. Believe it or not, the human mind can be very powerful when coupled with the body, and maybe, subconsciously let's say, you didn't want that baby, or at least you didn't want it with him. And guys, that changed my life because I feel it might be true. Even though I seem to want it very much, the truth is that I was not comfortable with the idea of having a baby with Bob. Whether it was because of his temper or what, or one way or the other, I felt it was wrong. Besides, as I told you at the time, there were a few times we tried, so it was no wonder we couldn't, either because of this. Well, besides, who's to say Bob himself can't come up with a condition that doesn't suit me? What makes me laugh is that he is now with someone he objectively won't be able to have a baby with. And that was where it showed that he didn't want me to, but just wanted to manipulate me. But the joke did not last very long, did it? Remember when I talked about how I was a little embarrassed about using alimony? Well, I didn't care. I used every penny to be able to do something that was sure to leave the couple with a nice memory. I talked to the state church priest center, which, by the way, is in charge of handing out pamphlets every Sunday for those present, and with the help of a little writer friend, we managed to get a certain fragment recited as the Mass that doesn't appear in any Bible verse, and I quote you this: "Thank you, Lord, for putting me in the way of being able to fly over the sinners who try to clip my wings, and deceive me, asking me for a baby without success, making me feel little, and now that my enemies have come together in holy union, I can only wish them the best of luck, knowing that I'm not the one who will never be able to have a baby. But now that my life is beginning again, I can leave with a big smile, which no one will be able to take away from me. Amen. And bells and whistles. I mean, it's too bad I couldn't take a video of it, but you should have seen everyone's faces when they read this out loud, knowing who the text was about. It was spectacular, and all eyes turned to Bob and Ava. Bob went to Ava asking for an explanation, and I'd say the best part was that my fertility tests were in Bob's pamphlets, in both the old and the most recent ones. Only the old one had my name crossed out, and it was my petty little pretty stepsister's name. For an instant, the world felt at peace. And now, how does the story end? Well, with a happier ending than the one I expected. Since I have to tell you guys, I'm pregnant. Yep, long story short, I met a guy a couple months ago, and well, you know how the rest is. Yeah, it's sudden, and I had a tremendous panic, but given the circumstances, the fact that I could bring a life into this world was something that made me scream with excitement.